We got us a corpse and cartridge occasion.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I need to do a video where I recap all the polls that I've done. I do that video probably every month, 2 months or so. The polls are really starting to pile up. I'll get to it eventually. Subscribe and stay tuned for that. I also stream on Twitch, post on Twitter, and on TikTok as well. You can find all those links down below. But what this video will be about is a poll that I did 4 hours ago at the time of recording. 7,500 votes. Boy, does these polls get a lot of votes, huh? If you guys ever have an idea of a question that you would like to ask the player base, you can say it to me in a live stream, you can send it to me in a DM, and maybe I could turn it into a future poll. It's rare when we have an opportunity to ask players, this many players, a yes or no question or a poll. But this one in particular, I asked the question, rate season 3. 1 out of 4. I can't do 5 because YouTube will not allow you to do 5 options, but I honestly don't think we would have needed the 5th option. The results of this poll was shocking. Like, I know a lot of people dislike season 3, but I was not expecting this level of disdain from the players. Once again, 7,500 votes and 50% said terrible. Also combined with a 36% who said bad. That is a total of 86% of the people who voted on this poll, and this is still like has some time to go. This is only 4 hours, right? We'll see it over the next couple of days, right? I know season 2 was heavily hated. It was review bombed. So much has been said about it. The developers apologized. They promised to do more. And then with season 3, they just did not deliver. I said it before. This is kind of my criticisms of season 3. I dislike how certain characters were not nerfed. Lydia, Brian Fury, Heihachi, Harong. I could list a couple of more names, but I just feel like characters who were problematic went unchecked. And I'm like, ain't no way, dog. Ain't no way we went a whole year practically and they didn't like do anything to some of the most diabolical characters. Like in season 2, Lydia was the most buffed. In season 3, she gets nothing. That doesn't make any sense, right? But then also another thing that I dislike about season 3 is how they pushed some characters a little bit further. Victor's new move, Raven's new like stance transition, that's something that I hated a lot about Raven in season 2 was the over here. And now he has another one that I can't remember exactly what he said, but there was a Raven player who was doing the other stance. And I know it's a skill issue. I know that you could jab, you can interrupt, you could do this, is that. But I personally just don't like that kind of style of Tekken. I don't like the here's a move and then I go into these stances. I just don't personally like that that's the direction, even if there is counterplay. But the number one thing that I think is a big problem with season 3 is just the lack of content, the lack of things to do, the lack of excitement. In season 1, we had story, we had game modes, we had the Tekken Lounge evolved a little bit. We had so much stuff. And same thing in season 2, we had some stuff as well. And in season 3, it's like they did a very minimal amount of changes, and then that's kind of it. And I'm like, man, for it being a live service game, they didn't do anything in the new season. And it goes back to what Eris was saying in the Heat Speak about how fighting games are kind of posers, where they're not actually being a real life service. Other games that are real life service, you talk about Marvel Rivals and stuff like that, they're adding new game modes, new this, new maps, new characters. They're adding like a lot of stuff to really make the experience worthwhile. So when people spend money in that game, they do so happily because they are paying for a good experience. But with Tekken, it seems like the developers are only really asking for money and they're not really delivering the experience. I could care less about balance. The reason why I lose is not all the time because of balance. I get jacked up by moves that are launch punishable. You guys see my gameplay. So the one thing that is like really disappointing for me is the lack of content. I remember in Tekken 7 when they added alternate versions of all the stages. They gave us kind of like nighttime versions. They gave us like the alternate Infinite Azure. I seen so many people asking for like nighttime versions of Yakushima, a daytime version of the rain stage. You have mods of these stages that are created. The mods break over time because the people are making new mods and they can't constantly update the old mods. But you can see that the players want these things. In Tekken 7 as well, they gave free alternate outfits to every character. The Brian Fury zombie outfit that they just sold was free in Tekken 7. And I know they're selling skins, they have to make money. I get it. But it's like they put so much love into Tekken 7 and they gave so much content with Tekken 7 and it was awesome. Now, Tekken 8 definitely has a lot of content. You talk about the story, you talk about arcade quests, you talk about the arcade endings. Even though they're not canon, I personally really dislike that. But still, you can but still, you can have casual fun with it, enjoy what they're displaying there, and have a good time. You also have Tekken Ball, online practice mode. You have watch replays. You have one of the best practice modes in Tekken ever with Tekken 8 features that they offer. You have a lot of stuff in the game. But when you talk about it being a live service game and you talk about the updating it over time, with Season 3, they just horribly dropped the ball in that aspect. But as I say this, that is not the reason why people voted terrible. That's just something that I try to highlight and spread awareness to. The reason why so many people voted terrible on this poll is because the developers are not listening to feedback. A counter argument that I see is that the developers are catering to casuals and they're trying to make that demographic in the game bigger. And a lot of people will say, you know, congrats on them or they support them in doing that. And honestly, I would too if it paid off. If they done a lot of the things that they done with Tekken 8 and we had Street Fighter numbers, I low-key would not be tripping. But they're trying everything that Street Fighter is doing and more and left and right and wrong and they're trying everything and it's just not paying off. And we constantly see them double down, triple down, and it just makes things worse. And you wonder, when will they start to think like, okay, this didn't work, let's go back the other direction? Because we've seen them do this multiple times in the past with previous Tekkens, where in Tekken 3, this was kind of like the base Tekken that all the Tekkens were kind of defined from, right? In Tekken 4, the developers said themselves that they tried to take some players' feedback into consideration while also experimenting with new ideas, and it ended up being terrible. But then with Tekken 5, they went back to what worked with Tekken 3. I almost said back to basics. They went back to what worked with Tekken 3 and they made one of the best Tekkens of all time, Tekken 5. Also, at the time, Harada considered Tekken 5 to be the most casual Tekken ever. He put a lot of new modes, he put a lot of game modes, he put a lot of, once again, stuff for the players to experience. It's crazy that nowadays people think about Tekken 5 as being the most like competitive Tekken ever, when it's really not the case. It is, but it's not. It's the most casual Tekken character, Tekken ever. From the way that they put in game modes, from the way that they started to create their characters, but there was always that room for growth. This was the best thing about Tekken. A character like Law symbolized this the best, where at a lower level of gameplay, you would see him played in a very crazy and sporadic and chaotic way. But then when you see high level or higher up the ranks, you will start to see Law take on that real identity. And having that distinction in casual and high level was amazing. And as a casual, it would give you something to strive for. So I really don't understand why the developers would decrease the skill gap or make moves easier, streamline, simplify so that lower level players can do the things that higher level players did. It's kind of giving them because what we see is that they're still randomly sporadically pressing buttons, but also at the same time you now just ruined the top level and there's nothing to strive for. Getting Emperor rank in Tekken 7 was more fulfilling than getting God 1 and God of Destruction in Tekken 8. And that's kind of crazy if you think about it. But to continue with what I was saying, right? After Tekken 5, which kind of like is the Tekken that was modeled after Tekken 3, but advanced a little bit, right? Tekken 6 was kind of like them testing out the formula, seeing what they can get away with, put some more casual mechanics in there, comeback mechanics, heavy guard. And then with Tekken Tag Tournament 2, once again, they listened to the player base and they went full on hardcore. Now, Harada has said multiple times that Tekken Tag Tournament 2 almost killed the franchise, and fair enough. Whether that was the case because it was competing with Call of Duty and the juggernaut that it was at the time, whether it was because it was poorly marketed, or whether or not you want to believe the developers that think it was because the game just was too difficult. Whatever reason you listen to, conclusion still remains the same, is that they went back to formula, back to basics. Tekken 7 was designed to kind of emulate Tekken 5, to kind of emulate Tekken 3. But once again, they made it just a little bit easier because those 3 games, according to the developers, right? You guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but the developers modeled all 3 of those same games with the same kind of core philosophy. They just made it easier each time. And Tekken 7, combined with the pandemic, combined with Street Fighter 5 failing, went on to be one of the most successful Tekkens of all time. So I don't blame them for then thinking, let's do more of this in Tekken 8. But the thing is, this time around, Street Fighter is stronger, there is no pandemic, and also what you didn't do in Tekken 7 was exclude the hardcore player base. What you're doing now in Tekken 8 is excluding the hardcore player base. This is why the players feel so betrayed in this game, because the developers completely changed the way that they were making the game. And I just wonder, when will that change? When will they reach a point where they say, okay, we went too far, just like they did with Tag 2, just like they did with Tekken 4, just like they did with Tekken 7, but in a reverse form? When will they realize that we went too far? Let's go back this way.